Alright, hey guys, welcome back to another video, and today we'll be going over a Reddit thread. It has gotten a lot of upvotes, and it's a pretty good discussion, and I decided to, make a video of it, talk my piece about it, give my opinion of it, and go from there, maybe have a solution for it as well, right? So, as you can see on the screen, the title is, "Please don't nerf units for balance purposes, just make them historically accurate." Now, I'm going to link this down below also if you want to go check it out for yourself, but let's get right into it. So human history itself is well balanced, isn't it? Why my heavy cavalries are charging the enemy line with only 10% of them crouching their lance? If you want to make the game balanced, don't nerf the cavalry, make them harder to obtain and train, more expensive to maintain, and let pikemen actually use pikes, not spears. When the game is closer to history and reality, it is more tactically and strategically balanced automatically, which is what we need. Anyone second this? I second it. It makes sense. Now, let's go over some of the points, right? So why my heavy cavalries are charging the enemy line with only 10% of them crouching their lance. There should be a lot more that are crouching in their lance, because in history, heavy horses, a lot of them had lances. A huge portion. Yes, they also had a sword that they would take out after, but whenever they started charging, the initial charge, you would usually have a lance, and it would, be very effective. And you know what I mean? Like, versus, I guess, infantry that you're charging, or archers, whatever you want to charge, right? Now, now he states, make them harder to obtain and train. Yes, I think one thing we do need is a bigger experience gap between a person not riding a horse, like let's say a Khazate nomad, to becoming a Khazate, what is it, raider, I think he's called, the one with the arrow, the horse archer. I think there needs to be a bigger gap there. I think it needs to be a lot harder to train them. Like, the experience needed should be like twice or 3 times more for upgrades from an infantry or an archer to a horse archer or a horseman. I think that needs to be way larger. Also, he states more expensive to maintain. Now, here's the thing. There's a feature that's coming to the game very soon. I don't know if it's in the next patch that's coming this week or in the one after it. I don't know exactly which patch, but we have seen it in action. The devs have showed it off in one of their development update videos, right? And it's the lame horse feature, which pretty much, if you neglect your horse in battle and let it take a lot of damage, or let it die, there's a big chance that the horse will actually die instead of just being revived next battle you're in. And there's a big chance it might also get debuffs, like what do you call it, like it becomes obviously a lame horse. The speed might go down, the hit points might go down, and stuff of that nature. Now, here's my way that I think that horsemen should, would in a way be kind of balanced. Obviously, more experience to be a horseman, because in all fairness, in history too, it's much easier to be an infantryman than it is to be a horseman. Because when you're a horseman, not only are you in combat, but you have to focus on how the horse is doing. You have to maneuver the horse. You need more experience. So that makes sense, historically speaking. Now, in terms of more expensive, it is way more expensive and harder to maintain a horseman than it is an infantryman. Simple, plain and simple. It makes sense, right? Because it's a whole horse. It's a whole another living creature that, apart from the soldier, right? So what I think should happen is that lame horse feature that we are getting for the player should also work. Not only, I don't know if it's going to work for the lords as well. I think the lords, working for the lords would make kind of like, it makes sense. It should work for the in-game units, all the troops that are on horsemen. If their horse dies in battle, they lose the horse. And then they will just spawn in without a horse in the battle unless you give it another horse. Unless you give them another horse. They won't go down in to a different troop. They won't turn into a different troop. They're just going to spawn in the same way they would spawn in a siege without the horse. I think that would be very, very good. And then if you want to give them another horse, you'll have to spend some money. You'll have to go find the right horse and stuff of that nature. I think that makes sense. I think that is doable. And I think that would be a very good change. If you have horsemen, they should cost more because they're harder to maintain. They're a bigger risk. It should be a big risk, big reward type of deal, right? Because they're very strong. And I'm not trying to say, like, oh, just turn their damage down, because in all reality, and even historically speaking, horsemen were very scary units. Now, next one, pikemen actually use pikes and not spears. So pikes are very effective versus horsemen, right? And right now, we don't really have a huge counter to horsemen. Uh, I would say even the best counter like is archers in a way because they can knock him off the horse. And right now, we don't really have the anti-horse unit. So in games where horsemen do very good, let's say for example Age of Empires 2, you have the pikemen, or you know what I mean, the counter to the horses, and usually the counter costs a lot less. What's it called than the horse itself, but the horse is very powerful against the other units except its counter, right? So I think that yes, pikes should be implemented. They should do a lot of extra damage to horses, and I think you do need that counter in the game that we do not have currently because they do use spears and not actual pikes, which are very effective versus horses. Now, when the game is closer to history and reality, is more tactical and strategically balanced. I agree. All right, let's see what this person has to say. He has a lot of upvotes, and I kind of skimmed it through before this. All right, so the problem right now is everything just kind of sucks unless they have a bow in their hands. Kind of true. Archers, including horse archers, are way more effective in this game than they have any reason to be. Melee cavalry only get by on tankiness and mobility. That is true. They suck at an actual shock attack. Melee infantry are not terrible, but spearmen truly suck and are worthless against everything. True. Two-handed polearm units do shred everything in melee, but their helplessness against ranged units is exacerbated by how OP archers are. I'd say things aren't even good from a gameplay standpoint. If everything was at least toned to more historical levels, we'd actually see balance. You would have to keep in mind that archers would have become a lot less lethal if things were historically accurate. Historically accurate though, even horse archers. True. Alrighty. So let's go over the points. So first point is obviously everything with a bow in his hand is very, very strong. Now here's my here's what I think should happen. When it comes to archers, I think that I don't know exactly how they would do it in the game, but I feel like I don't want to just say nerf their damage because that's not the answer, right? But I think in a way that the higher you upgrade an archer, the better arrows they have and the better bow they have. Therefore, they can penetrate armor harder and they'll do a lot more damage. That makes sense. I just think we need a rebalance in terms of the numbers when it comes to that specific aspect. But then again, you also have to see what the enemy is wearing, right? Like if an archer is shooting, regardless of its rank, if an archer is shooting somebody with no armor, you know what I mean? So like a battalion, let's say one of those battalion two-handed units that have literally no armor, you can see their chest. If you shoot them, it doesn't matter if it's a kind of like a low level, not a low level, kind of like a very cheap arrow or a very expensive arrow. It doesn't really matter, right? Because it's going to pierce the skin. But I think in a way the game has to kind of implement, like, if this person has, like, let's say plate armor, like very heavy plate armor, like a very heavy horseman, most archers aren't going to penetrate his armor unless they hit like a very, very fragile chainmail part, right? And I feel like the archers all the way at the top, like the very high tier archers, they should be able to penetrate that armor because historically speaking, some did. That's that's what a lot of historians have said, that they had arrows that did actually go through a lot of the armor that they did make back in the day. But in terms of like let's say like some cheap arrows and cheap bows that the lower level archers have, I think that they should be able to penetrate a lot less, in my opinion. How they would implement that, I have no clue, but it would be very good if they could figure out a system for it. Now, in terms of, he said melee cavalry only get by tankiness and mobility. That is true, but I think that's pretty much all they need, in my opinion. I don't think horsemen are technically right now. They are overpowered in a way because infantry is so bad. You know what I mean? But they're not overpowered in terms of concept, in my opinion. Like if infantry actually did its job and it had pikemen, I feel like horsemen would not be that big of a threat, right? If you just kept like, let's say 10, 15, 20 pikemen in your army, you would never be afraid of like a huge horseman army. But right now, since there's really no counter to horsemen, the only real counter to horsemen is your own horsemen and very good archers. And that's not really, as accurate as it can get, if that kind of makes sense, right? Now, the two-handed discussion. Two-handed polearms units do shred everything in melee. That is true. They're very, very strong, and I think that's good. I think it makes sense. And I think the fact that, range units counter them, it also makes sense. I think this is not a problem. It's just, I don't know how to explain it. It's like, I think there's just a few little tweaks and a few little unit tweaks that we need to do in the game to kind of just balance the whole thing out. Like, we don't have to rewrite, you know what I mean? Like, everything. There's just a few little tweaks, you know what I mean? It's just like, I don't know. I think there should be counters. I think there should be hard counters, if that kind of makes sense. I think some units should hard counter other units, right? Like, I feel like an archer should really hard counter a unit with no shield, if that kind of makes sense, and barely any armor, because two-handed units usually don't have the most armor. So therefore, I think obviously they should be overpowered in that situation. Same thing with, like, let's say horsemen being super tanky and the mobility. That's what it should be, right? I just think, like, how effective arrows are in low-tier archers, that needs to be fixed, in my opinion. Also, like he says right here, I think we do need pikemen. I think we need actual pikes that will, take down horsemen very easily, because they did back in the day, right? What else did he say? You would have to keep in mind archers would become a lot less lethal if things were historically accurate. See, yeah, and in my opinion, I think that another thing that does need to be checked out is, like, I feel like there needs to be a kind of a big change, but not a really big change to archers. I think low-level archers, their accuracy should be absolute garbage, in my opinion. I think they do miss sometimes in the game right now, but archers, they're always reliable right now. Regardless if they're like a tier 2 archer, tier 3 archer, or a tier 6 archer. They're all very accurate. And I think that it doesn't really make sense, in my opinion. Yes, the tier 6, the tier 5 archers, the ones all the way at the top, of course they should be accurate, right? They're professionals at that point. But I think that tier 1 through tier 3 should be very highly inaccurate, right? And because it doesn't make sense for them to be super accurate, especially against moving targets and stuff of that nature, if that kind of makes sense. Let's see. Archers really lose their punch against shield walls. Yeah, another thing is formations. They're not the best right now. And AI doesn't really ever do like a shield wall, because shield walls are very, very strong, but never get used. Spearmen are indeed terrible at the moment. Also true. They don't really counter anything, and everything counters them, so that's a big problem. Let's see what else people are saying. Roman tortoise shell formation with pikes. See British hedgehogs too, with archers in the middle. Would definitely stop cavalry charges from being effective and be historically accurate. True. So what they would do is they would put their shields up, either in a circle or kind of like in a line. The archers would be behind them, and then they would put their pikes out through the seams of the shields, right? And that would stop a lot. But unfortunately, the AI is not there. What else we got? As always, gameplay over realism. It's not fun for players. It needs to be changed or removed, especially considering that this is a fantasy game. Yeah, I think that's another problem with just games overall nowadays. And I saw that you guys did want me to do some like actual rants, but I feel like games nowadays, like, that's kind of how it goes, where it's like, if it's not fun, take it out. If it's too complicated, take it out. And it's just like, unfortunately, that is how it is. I feel like nowadays, there's a lot of stuff going around in the world, and just like overall, we're like, people want like games that kind of keep your attention with constant, action and stuff in your face, and boom, 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 boom. And if there's some slow moments where you have to actually think about something, you know what I mean, or kind of like plan something out in terms of like, let's say formations, or like how you're gonna counter an army. You know what I mean? Game companies are kind of scared to give you those moments because they think you're just gonna be like, oh, this is too tough, turn off the game, and I'm gonna go somewhere else. But that's a discussion for another day. But yeah, I think that's gonna do it for this. I don't want to make this video too long. It's getting kind of too long, like always. But yeah, what do you guys think? How would we balance this? And don't just say nerf the damage. That's not. That ain't it. And I feel like a lot of things in the game are at a good place. It's just some tweaks need to be done in certain areas to really bring it all together, if that kind of makes sense. But alrighty, boys. Ask me any questions, any concerns, all of that. I'm going to be covering the beta when it comes out, hopefully tomorrow. Probably not today because it's already too late. But yeah, very excited. And yeah, like always, stay safe.